so much for coming. We're so excited to be here with y'all. I'm really honored today to be with one of my dear friends and a poet that I've always admired and looked up to, Chuck Perkins, in celebration of his latest debut book of poetry and essays, Beautiful and Ugly Too. This is an amazing book. So if you don't already have it, you need to get it, okay? First, I'm gonna introduce Chuck, give you his bio, and then Chuck's gonna read us a few poems, and then we're gonna go back and forth. I'm gonna ask some questions about the book, and we'll just kind of roll with it, all right? Okay. Oops. All right. Chuck Perkins is a poet and former Marine. He was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. He's a product of the city's public school system. Afterward, he attended Xavier University of Louisiana, where he received a bachelor's degree in business, and he's currently the owner of the performance venue we're currently in, Café Istanbul. So I welcome Chuck Perkins.
Thanks a lot, y'all. I'm gonna read a couple and then Skye and I are gonna just have a conversation. First, I'm gonna read. I guess it, gets right to the, political situation we currently exist in. So I want to hurry up and get this one out of the way. I call it the oligarchy republic. Freedom manipulators, liberty liquidators, hijackers of sovereignty, Machiavellian machinations color the equation. The deceitful disciples of perfidious Albion are rapacious. One man's freedom is another man's treasure. One man's body is another man's gold. Tongues quote scripture with eyes fixed on the plunder. The outgunned are vanquished. Their blood is the currency of castles and temples. Be mindful of the theft cloaked in the accoutrements of authority. Propaganda spoke in the erudite tone of legitimate history. A white iconography, pensive and pious. Unfettered hawks fly behind the shield of government seals, lustful of new feeding grounds. They wear the feathers of seraphim swine, bearing gifts for all while defecating the entrails of recipients. These are not the laws of God. They are the laws of powerful men. If the army is big enough, square pegs fit into round holes. If the masses move in opposition, they will change the law. It's a head-scratching conundrum. The representative democracy smells like an oligarchy republic. If voting doesn't matter, why is someone always trying to steal yours? Why the voter suppression? Why the gerrymandering? Why the fear of losing power? Any pronouncement of a shortage of freedom is bullshit. There's enough to go around for everyone. The scarcity of this inalienable right is a man-made construct. Freedom ain't free, but it should be. Your freedom ain't free, but it should be. Tell them, leave my freedom alone. Go and get your own. Come now, leave my freedom alone. This next poem is a poem I just finished maybe like last week sometime. I call it the Tao of Chuck. I have another one called the Gospel of Chuck. My friends say, hey, how many religious? And I'm not even a religious person. It says, built in an expansive juxtaposition of beauty, surrounded in a world of sin, the phallus and the steeple stand erect. Both aim for heaven. Prayers rise from both sides. Lowbrow content creators aim for hell. Christian onlookers cheer. Their family values ethos was a straw man. The moral compass is stuck on hypocrite. The pragmatist says good drugs are a Faustian bargain. The cynic says, and so is good sex. Delusion is a clean substance. You can go to sleep believing in Jesus and wake up without a hangover. The consequences might bury you, but don't bet on the second resurrection. The man who views the world through rose-colored glasses is a simp, seeing flowers where others see thorns, glimpsing the blossom while others wallow in the atrophy. He sees light at the end of the tunnel where others see a train wreck. Sporting his pink sunglasses, he dances his way to the grave. Even if the train kills him, the man's life is more beautiful. A Pyrrhic victory is defeat. The skeptic lives on guard in preparation of the adversary. The sky is always falling. It's a stressful life. Our pink sunglass wearer wins at life. He prefers death over living with the fear of death. There are 8 billion people on the planet. You can't find 20 people who love you. And even worse, you can't find 20 people who hate you. The world cannot take notice of your personal conflagration. There are 8 billion other fires. Some run hotter than others, but they all consume flesh. The earth turns and the fire burns. The hopeless aim to escape the pain. They want to numb themselves and float above the madness. Too sad to stay, but too scared to go. Lonely hearts weep and the wounded ones scream. Silly hearts laugh and the joyful ones sing. Nobody's hotter than the sun, but it doesn't brag on itself. It prefers to let the moon shine. The dark side of the moon is a cemetery. It's where shadows go to die. They would have stayed longer if they felt love instead of suspicion. Pearls, purses, and pistols. Why is everybody clutching? The jump from civility to pandemonium is a short one. If I curl my thumb over my 4 fingers, it's going to be a fight. If I flip my thumb and my index finger, there will be blood. If I replace my thumb with my middle finger, it's a peace offering. If I remove my index finger,
poems. I mean, they feel so timely, and I want to talk about Oligarchy Republic, and it reminds me of another poem in the collection, The Uncivilized. Kind of hitting on the same themes, seems very timely, seems very prescient. We're living in this world where the political situation is so unstable and chaotic, right? And so I want you to sort of speak to your specific sort of inspiration for Oligarchy Republic, for the Uncivilized, because they just feel like such timely poems. I mean, and the new poem too, the Chuck also. You know, I love this sort of like interrogation of like influencer culture, and that line, delusion is so clean, or I can't remember exactly, but I love that line so much.
Thank you, sir. Well, yeah, the Oligarchy Republic, just, I mean, paying attention to, you know, what's happening, like, in the world today. Like that one line where I said, you know, if the army's big enough, square pegs can fit into round holes. I mean, if you got a big enough army, you could make whatever laws you want. And a few years back here in New Orleans, I was a part of the group Taking Down NOLA, where we were out there, you know, protesting and doing what we thought was necessary to get some of these Confederate monuments taken down. But if you notice, one of the things that happened subsequent to that, in other cities, where they had the same issue, the politicians, I guess, who were on the other side, who thought they needed to remain there, they just changed the law. They said, okay, now we got to change the law, so if you ever decide to take this down, then you'll be breaking the law. And that's only one instance where this sort of thing happens, but I think that's a good example of what happens if the ruling class decide that they want something to be a certain way, then they'll just change the law.
They make it happen.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about the format of this book. So, one of the reasons why this book stands out so much to me as a debut collection is because not only does it have poetry in it, but it also has memoir and essays.
Yes.
And I just love the idea of structuring a debut in that way. It's not the way that we typically think about a poetry debut, right? And so I would love for you to talk a bit about why you felt it was important or necessary to include essays as well as the poetry. And also, how did you decide, because I know you're always writing essays, you're always, you're so prolific. How you decided which of the essays were actually going to make it in the book, because they feel very precise and deliberate.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, they published the book, and I had already signed a contract with another publisher, and I didn't like the way this book is, the amount of stuff I have in here. Yeah. It wouldn't have been like that, right? And so I expressed that to the editor of the publisher, and he was nice. He said, "Hey man, well this is what we're doing. I can let you out the contract." And I said, "Well, okay, let me out the contract." And then the next day I was like, "Man, why did I say that? I should have just shut up, right? Let my big mouth." But I am so happy I did say that, because I have to give the University of Louisiana a lot of credit, because this is really my book.
Yes.
Like sometimes, like you get the finished product and it's your creation, but combined with someone else.
It's been so over-curated that it doesn't feel like...
But they really let me have the book that I wanted to have. And I always wanted to have essays. Well, I gotta say this, a lot of the essays came, a lot of these essays came during COVID. At that time we don't have a job, we don't have anything to do, so I would wake up in the morning and just start writing, and I actually tried to write a memoir, and I sent it out to a few agents, but the main thing I got was I gotta find a narrative arc. I gotta get that. So I decided that I was going to use some of those in my book, and the reason I wanted to do it is because I don't know. Sometimes if you could read a poem from someone, right? But if it seemed like they're just writing from from something maybe they've learned about, but they didn't really experience it directly. I mean, we can still learn great things from people who get information in that way. But when you see a person's life and you see like where they come from and some of their experiences, and then you read their poems, it might hit differently.
It deepens the experience of the poem, because then you have sort of this contextual framework in which to bring to the poem as well.
Exactly.
Instead of just your own sort of conjecture about what you think happened, right?
Yes.
One of the essays I want to talk to you about is police. So I love that essay so much. I mean, we were both born and raised in New Orleans, and I love that essay so much because whenever I talk about your book, I'm like, this essay, One of the things that really stood out to me in that essay was not only the experience with the police that you had as a young child, getting pulled over, your father's sort of anxiety about that image you give of like the blue light of the police car, like, the lights framing his face and the horror of that, but also this conversation about Mark Essex. For those of you who don't know, Mark Essex was known as the New Orleans Sniper, and I really didn't know that much about him until I read your essay. But I went back and I started like doing research about him and his experiences. So basically, he was radicalized by the United States military. So he grew up very sheltered, hadn't experienced racism. Some historians say he had not been inoculated against racism, right? So he goes into the military, has these horrible experiences where people are being racist towards him, and then sort of gets activated to commit this horrible crime spree. And so I love that you included that, because I literally went back, I talked to my parents, I was like, where were you when like Mark Essex was doing that. Like, what were you doing? How old? You know, my mom's like, oh, I remember watching it on TV, and it was like the Howard Johnson Hotel, and like we were all. But she said something so interesting. She was like, we were like rooting for him to like survive it. Mm-hmm. You know, and so there's sort of this like complicated relationship with that. You know, managing the horrors of what he did, but also the horrors of the reality of what it means to exist as a black man in America and have to deal with insane amounts of racism and trauma. So could you speak more to this? I could go on and on.
First of all, I want to say something. There's a guy, I have a music CD as well called Voices of NOLA, right? NOLA Voices. And there was a guy I met, he's a London writer who writes about music, and he did he reviewed that CD like sometimes in 2012. And he said that whoever Chuck Perkins is a spiritual offspring to Gil Scott-Heron. And I was like, wow, because I listen to Gil Scott-Heron every day.
Yes.
So I was like, how did he know, right?
Yes.
But then a guy named Cartwright, and so he and I kind of developed a friendship over the years. But when I wrote the memoir, I sent it to him, and he was really angry about that poem.
Really?
He thought that I was glorifying Mark Essex, right? And so we had like a little, a little. And me, I'm the kind of person. I don't think anything I say in this book. Everyone who reads it or hears anything I say, they have a right to challenge me.
Yes.
To say, hey, you said this. How can you say that? I think that you got that right, and I can either articulate my position, tell you why I have the right to say that, or I can't. But I won't get angry at you for asking me about it. And so if he just wanted to have the discussion, I would have welcomed that.
Yeah.
But he was acting like he was offended because I said that. So we haven't talked since. What happened was I had to ask him to write one of the blurbs.
Yes.
And then that's how it came up, you know.
Yes.
And so he said, well, I should have challenged you on that earlier. Maybe I should. I say, well, that's fine. That's fair. I won't use your deal, you know.
Right.
But yeah, regarding Mark Essex, it just so happened that my great grandmother lived in Monroe, Louisiana, which is about 300 miles from here. And so my father, and two of my brothers, we. In 1971, I think we dropped my grandmother off. We went in her home for about an hour, made sure she was good, got back in the car and came back to New Orleans. And then, once we get close to home, I mean, we've been driving all day. I mean, I'm 7, and we just want to get home. But then there's this traffic, and we can't move, and we don't know what's going on. Next thing you know, we're seeing like people in military outfits and M16s, and we like, oh my God, what is going on? And finally, my father was able to talk to one of the National Guardsmen, and he was explaining to him what was happening. And I remember it was the first time that I ever heard the word sniper. I didn't know what a sniper was. But that was the first time I heard the word. So still today, whenever I hear that,
think about that's your first association.
I think about that. And I also want to, like you talked about how Mark Essex was radicalized. Yeah. One of the other things I mentioned in that essay is that happened in 1971, was 71 years earlier at 1208 Saratoga Street, which is maybe less than a mile from where the Howard Johnson Hotel is. There was a similar incident that happened here in New Orleans, and the guy's name was Robert Charles. And yeah, there's several books on Robert Charles. Ida B. Wells wrote one of them. There's one called the Tragedy of Robert Charles. I highly recommend it. It was a very similar situation with Essex and Robert Charles.
Yeah, no, I think it really affected me because you were also in the military, right? Mm-hmm. My dad was in the military. I grew up hearing stories about things that happened to him in the 80s, right? And so reading that just sort of like opened this up to me in a different way, how, easily that could change you deeply, right? Mm-hmm. Having these experiences. And so I thank you for bringing this in because nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks about those things. So thank you. Did you want to read 2 more poems for
Sure.
us? And then we'll like continue our dialogue.
I would like to read. What can I say about beauty? We say that God created us in His image. Perhaps we created Him in ours. Why else would God be jealous? We are only human. That would make God petty. We look for truth and answers that tell us what we want to hear. Monuments are built for the messenger. The road was not paved with good intentions. It was laid with the evil expectations of snake venom and dragon fire. We castigate dogs for eating dogs, but man's appetite for man is more voracious. On this matter, we cannot claim superiority to dogs. Now, what else might I say about beauty? A girl wants to terminate a pregnancy, and she's scolded by rabid interlocutors on the sanctity of life. The baby is born with all of the needs created by God. The mother and child are abandoned. It is forgotten the child is sacred. The sperm and egg are the only matter. We love the earth but hate the dirt. Didactic hypocrites are the new black. Police are preferred to teachers instead of schools. We build jails. Now, what else might I say about beauty? A son kills his father. These next 3 things, all of them happen here in New Orleans in like a week's time. A son kills his father. A mother kills her daughter. And 3 children are swallowed by the river. The wheel of violence is always grinding. We choose not to stop it or slow it down. In the eyes of the executioner, we want blood. It makes for good sleep. No sympathy for what brought them here, no desire to change that. Justice becomes a miscarriage of itself. The community takes no responsibility for the deeds of the tormented or the dead. Now, what else might I say about beauty? A gun is an American security blanket. For more accurate representation, all 50 stars should be replaced with a 9mm. The stock market's at an all-time high. Homeless encampments are the new suburban sprawl. An old lady sleeps on a pissy mattress beneath the bridge, a ubiquitous symbol of iniquity. She lives unnoticed until she has the gall to ask for $1. Now, what else might I say about it? I'm gonna tell you where that poem came from. I happened to be reading a book, a collection of writing from Alan Locke. I'm sorry. They refer to him as the father of the Harlem Renaissance. And Oscar Wilde. It wasn't a deliberate thing. Somehow I just read them right at the same time, consecutively. And they were both talking about beauty and aesthetics. Now, Alan Locke, the guy from the Harlem Renaissance, a black guy, he was saying, he had this thing saying that it's art for art's sake. Like, if you're an artist, like, you just gotta be an artist. You can't, like, if you're trying to say something politically or socially, you know, that's not art. And I disagreed with that so vehemently because we talking about a guy, you know, they're like maybe a generation and a half removed from slavery. So you've been through that kind of trauma for like over 300 and some years, but you can only use art for the sake of art, and so that's where that came from. It's like, so if I'm going to write, well, what else can I say about beauty? You got all of this stuff happening. So anyway, so that's where.
Yeah, I love that you hit on that week in ones because I remember that week where like it was like every tragedy that could have ever happened in that 7 days.
God. And you know what? The guy, the son who killed his father, the father was a pastor, and so he and I used to have a talk show at WBOK. Yes. And he had the morning gospel show. And he was also a magician. And so he's been on this stage several times. What a nice guy. But his son was having some kind of mental thing. And his son was up reading the Bible loudly. And he told his wife to go to sleep, that he would be able to take care of his son, that he would take care of it. Yep.
Yeah.
So-
One of the things I love about your book is that it celebrates the things that are wonderful about New Orleans. The music, Mardi Gras, all of our cultural sort of markers, but it also reveals the reality of what it means to exist in this city. And that's one of the things, right? This lack of attention to mental health, right? And we see how that plays out in our communities as well. One of the other things that it sort of evokes for me is a constant theme in your poems and in your essays, which is this sort of idea that you had when you were younger that you were not going to live to see a certain age, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I want you to say a little bit about that, because I feel like it's such an important tenor throughout the book, right? And I was like shocked when I read the poems, and then when I read the essay that sort of goes into sort of this harrowing experience or that you had with your friends, on a night out in New Orleans, everything's fun, everything's cool, right? And then in the blink of an eye, everything changes.
Yeah, I will, I gotta find out where that poem is.
Let me see, I might have it right down here.
Fine. Oh, yeah. So I call this one "When Bus Fare Ain't Enough." I was never a gangster. I never sold drugs. I never carried a gun. I helped the timid boys. I worked every day since the age of 15. I respected my elders. I went to college after the Marine Corps. I paid taxes. I knew my virtues couldn't save me. I smelled the residue of violence and bloodletting beyond the front door before pubic hairs. We all expected to face the monster. We are taught to look it in the eyes and don't back down. Raised to fight like cocks. Not by those who hated others, but by the ones who loved us. Their wish was for us to make it home. It's what you use when bus fare ain't enough. We forget the reason why. We morph into something strange. Violence changes us. Cooked in the country's DNA, we are not the progenitor. Every day, a renewed awareness of mortality. I wish to take it for granted like normal people. There are better things to think about. I was shocked to see your gun, the nefarious amulet and constant visitor of my dreams. I didn't know you, but I had been expecting you for years. I imagined more intrigue, a better storyline with a hint of sex appeal. You and I do our war dance over frivolity, and you about to kill me for nothing. The outsiders can't hear the incessant soliloquy whispering to young men like you and me. Draw your line in the sand, hold your chin forward. You stand in the fire like a man. You could never be a slave. A silent voice born out of terrorism. I pray it's true. We are more than adversaries. We're both victims. This doesn't stop me from being afraid, and it doesn't save me from hating you. No time for introspection. You shoot up the car. 4 lives hang in the balance. Only the devil uses power so. When the bullet stopped, along with your exposition on the insignificance of life, I am happy to still breathe. We did not call the police. How does one cheat fate? When the beefs and grudges were wiped clean, when the music was turned off, when the party was over and the beer was gone, when the only companion in the room should have been peace and quiet, you would always appear, the dreaded figment of my imagination, the one who robs the terrorized of sleep. This includes all poor people. You've been on my mind from the moment I became aware. The possibility of our commingled face existed whenever I stepped out the door. I didn't know when you would come, but I was sure you were coming. However tragic, they call it destiny. Thank you. There's one poem I gotta read this other poem. I grew up in this neighborhood in Carrollton. We call it Pigeon Town. So Lil Wayne lived on one. I went to high school with his mother. They lived on one side of Claiborne Avenue. That was Holly Grove. The opposite side was Pigeon Town, which was where I was from. Right? And so one of my friends, and we grew up on this park. It was like a family. There were about like 50 kids. I saw them. We didn't have computers and all that. We watched the cartoons until about 4:30, and then we all ended up in the park, basketball, baseball. So I felt very, very close to the kids in my community. And one of these boys, I guarantee you, I'm not being hyperbolic, he probably one of the most prolific killers in New Orleans in like the last 50, 75 years, something like that. I mean, he was like on that level. And he finally got killed. And one of my friends said, man, Chuck, this dude felt like he can do anything, man. And he said one time, excuse my French, y'all, he said, he told me, he said, you know, he could do anything but one thing. He said, you know what that one thing was? And I was like, what? He hated to go to sleep, man. He said, Chuck, he said, every nigga I ever killed chasing me in my dreams. He said, so it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, he want to take you to breakfast, do something, anything to avoid getting in the bed and closing his eyes, right? And so I wrote this, and I couldn't, when my friend told me I couldn't get that image out of my head. And so I was actually, when I wrote this, I was in a town in France called Périgueux, in like a medieval home, just lying in this bed looking out at this garden. And this is what I came up with. How does it seem? Every man you ever killed chasing in your dreams, ghosts run you up walls, silent cries make your skin crawl. Your cold blood is steaming, you lie down for silence but feel the screaming, hear the death bells ringing. Hey, hey, killer, your nightmare's a thriller. Ever since you pulled that trigger, you killed your brother. Don't call him nigger, and you gotta run now. The cry of the dead's in your head, and you can't turn it off. The cry of the dead's in your head, and you can't turn it off. You got to run now. Raindrops sound like gunshots, and it's never gonna stop. Raindrops sound like gunshots, and it's never gonna stop. Raindrops sound like gunshots, and it's never gonna stop. It's your turn to run now. The cry of the dead's in your head, and you can't turn it off. The cry of the dead's in your head, and you can't turn it off. You got to run now. It's never no fun when the rabbit gets the gun. It's never no fun when the rabbit gets the gun. Now you gotta run. And while you're always running, the rabbit's slowly walking. You're hiding in your dreams, but the rabbit's slowly stalking your dreams. Your dreams, your dreams smell like Baghdad, aftershock and all. And it's gonna drive you mad. Your dreams smell like Baghdad, and it's gonna drive you mad. You better say your prayers, 'cause you can't kill your nightmares, and you can't kill your nightmares. It's your turn to run. The cry of the dead's in your head, and you can't turn it off. The cry of the dead's in your head, and you can't turn it off. You got to run now. You're slipping in your dreams, burnt up by your coal. Your humanity is shattered, you ain't got no soul. The sweat is on your face with a fast heartbeat. Ever since you shot that gun, you can't get no sleep. Close your eyes, you're afraid to be alone. Be glad it won't be long, for the devil calls you home. And close your eyes, you're afraid to be alone. Be glad it won't be long, for the devil calls you home.
Thank you, Chuck. I am so fascinated by that poem, that line, every man you ever killed chasing you in your dreams. I mean, and you said this man was like a very prolific, and
and I gotta say something, and I don't know that person.
Yeah.
And I grew up, my father was a school teacher, and in some ways, maybe my family had a little bit more than some of my friends. So I grew up around poverty and people who didn't have, and there was some kids, I mean, you could look at the family situation and be like, wow, the father's not around, or somebody's being raised by the grandmother, she's doing stuff like that, and you can see, things probably won't end well for him. But with this guy, he was an anomaly because his family unit was very, very solid. His father was a very hard-working man. He went to work every day. His father was on the park with us, coaching other people's kids, helping them if he could. His mother was at home. They weren't drug addicts or alcoholics. Now, he did have a big family, and like some of his cousins and stuff like that were like out in the street, but he was an anomaly. Like, if you would have just showed me a picture of all of us on this playground and said one of these guys, he wouldn't have been one of those guys.
That's so crazy. It's like you don't even have that to do, right? You like literally, and still, this is what you become, right?
I'm still. I have so many. I know about like over 80 people in the city that's been murdered, right? So that kind of stuff is not. I see it, but him, I'm still confused by how he ended up there.
Yeah. Maybe he just wanted to be the antithesis of everything that the family represents. I mean, some people do. They're like, they don't want to continue that. They want to just do the opposite thing, right? What I really love about that poem is this sense of anxiety that's so palpable, right? This inescapable, and hearing the context of like, couldn't even sleep, right? How did you manage to imbue that within the poem, this tension, this anxiety, that is just this constant tenor that runs through the poem? I think it was just so masterfully done.
Thank you very much. For that kind of subject matter, I mean, there's so many movies and books and stuff like that, and so my attempt is to try to get at a more honest kind of thing, because I don't think that a lot of people explore that side of it.
Yes.
Like, he's a person, he did all of this kind of stuff, and most of the time you see it if, like in one of the videos, somebody gets shot, the person who got shot, you lose, the other guy go on and live happily ever after.
Yeah.
But it's like, nah, man, it's like this guy was tormented,
yes,
because of that kind of stuff.
He carried the souls that he took.
Yeah, man.
There's another poem I would love for you to read. It's like the only time I'm like, please, could you read this poem first? I love the Crack House poem. It is one of my favorite poems in this book because it feels like you guys have to hear this. It feels like a Renaissance painting. The way that you have written this poem, I love it so much, and that there's so much I want to say about it. Would you like to read that poem?
Yeah, sure, I read it, but after, if we can't leave, as long as you have enough time to do something a little more on the positive.
Yes. Well, okay. So let's see what we are doing for time. So it's 11:54. I think we have till 12:15.
Okay, good.
So we have a little bit of time, and then we'll pivot to joy and happiness, love and wonder.
First of all, I want to acknowledge Cameron Lovejoy. Where is he? I thought I saw him.
Oh,
There
hey,
you go,
Cameron.
right
It's hard to
there.
see with the light.
So Cameron, you know, when I sent this book to ULL, you know, Cameron had helped me to edit the whole thing and even format it. So I didn't just send him like a rough manuscript. It looked like something that was already like kind of ready to go. And so I think with Cameron and his effort probably helped me out a lot on the other end. So can we please give a big round of applause? Thank you so much, brother. And yeah, and so this poem, this Crack House poem, believe it or not, is a very true story. I was living in Chicago. I'm from here, but I was living in Chicago. And I had a company car, and I drove here in a company car, and I went to the Matador to see Walter Wolfman Washington, and probably had a few too many like vodka and cranberries. And so after the thing, I was like, man, I shouldn't drive right now. I'm gonna have to just sit out, chill out a little bit. And so where Three Muses is on Frenchman, I just sat on those stairs, and this white guy, homeless dude, his name was T-Ray. From what they tell me, that's a common name out in Cajun land. His name was T-Ray, right? And he just came over and started talking to me. And so, like my mother said, I've never met a stranger. So me and T-Ray, we sitting here, it's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning having a great little conversation.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
as
saying?
one does.
And so, after it was over with, when I thought I was good to drive, I said, hey T-Ray, man, listen, man, it's been very nice meeting you, but I think I'm about to go now, right? And he looked at me and said, can you give me a ride to my squat? Like that, right? And it's hard for me to just say, nah, man. That's what I wanted to say. I want to say, nah, bro, I'm not.
You were in too deep at that point.
Yeah, you're not getting in my car. So I came up with this thing. He was smoking, right? And I said, well, I know what. I said, man, I would give you a ride, T-Ray, but I can't have cigarette smoke in the car. Before I finished the word, he had threw the cigarette down and put it out. Oh. All right, get in the car, right? So he gets in this car, and I bring him to his homeless, this abandoned building where he's staying. And I ain't lying, y'all, it's the poet in me. I saw that building, I was like, wow. I've driven by the places like this a million times. I ain't never been in a place like that. Right? I said, you know what, T-Ray, I'm gonna come inside. Like that. And he was, I don't care, come on. And I swear to you, this place is boarded up. And so what you had to do was take the the plywood that was in front of the door and pull it out and squeeze in like a rat or something, like squeeze it. And I ain't gonna lie, y'all, I've had a pretty adventurous life. I've done a lot of things maybe I shouldn't have, but before I went in that thing, I said, boy, this could be the worst. Because I really don't know what's on the other side of this door. I said, this could be the worst decision you ever made, I'm like, hell with it, I'm going in.
Yes.
And so I slid in there, and the next thing you know, they got first he takes me to his room, and it's cool, he's showing me around, I'm just looking around like, wow. Then there's a big hole in the wall, because it was a double, and they got about 5 or 6 people over in the other room. So then I go over there, and it was like real primordial. They got a can of Sterno in the middle of the floor, and everybody's like, stooped around the fire. And next thing you know, they smoking crack and everything. I don't smoke crack. Next thing you know, T-Ray said, well, y'all know you ain't here with me, you gotta read the Bible. And he said he couldn't find his glasses, so he said, here, you read the Bible. I'm not a religious person, and I don't smoke crack, but I'm with them reading the Bible and smoking crack at 5 a.m. And so after it was over with, the first person I called, because I knew, and she was out of town, I knew I was gonna write this poem, was my wife, to tell her where I was. Oh my God. I can't even tell y'all about the colorful language. And after she finished that, she hung up. You remember you got 2 daughters. Say, you got 2 daughters. She goes up the phone, called back. You got 2 daughters, you remember? Anyways, I just wanted to tell y'all.
This is a poet's poem, y'all. Like, hearing that story, please, take it away, Chuck.
Here it is, 60. Okay. There we go. I knew beyond the facade of the boarded windows and doors existed a world where birds never sing and flowers never bloomed. But I entered. A cigarette lighter was the torch that illuminated the room and revealed the graffiti that offered the clues of the downtrodden who had come here to blast off and find a piece of peace and sleep. There were enough mattresses for everybody. The cigarette lighter illuminated the Neanderthal craftsmanship of the door maker. Big feet do sheetrock at just the right place. Now no room in this house is safe from the misery that grows in the 14 poems of this nickel-begging tribe of 7. The first room on the left-hand side of the house is where I saw them. They were young and old, black and white, half-footed Vietnam vets explaining something about squatters' rights, quoting scripture between drug-induced trips to Pluto. It's where the Flintstones meets the Jacksons, everybody's stoned and flying high. Needle-sized red rivers crisscross the whites of his eyes like kindergarten chicken scratch. Matted threads on his face and head screamed in all directions, almost concealing the missing piece of yellow ivory behind a top lip. His pale skin wore the gray tint of French Quarter grime, and when he stood, he balanced himself with a half a gallon of cheap vodka, moaning a gospel that cut like the blues. He was T-Ray, king of the squatters. 1 year shy of 60, Long Green was the old black man still hopping to cop some drugs, returning with 2 quarts of Miller and a pocket full of stones. He'd be your errand boy if you break him off a piece. A blue bandana soaked the sweat of anticipation that paints his dark face, looking like smeared on Vaseline shining under the flicker of an orange fire. Tattooed arms and dirty fingernails removed the shoulder-length hair from John's eyes, hair as stringy and as greasy as the gas-attended shirt that John could have been wearing when he turned his back on civilization. John could have been 40, and he could have been a mechanic, and he could have been a redneck until he opened his mouth showing his fondness for Long Green. That's my dog. That's my dog. That's my dog. And when T-Ray boasted about how all of his neighbors loved him, John could have been right when he informed him that Miss Smith, where she was the one who called the police on you. And he could have been wrong when he accused Long Green of stealing his pipe, but he could have been right. He could have been white, he could have been Creole, he could have been a lot of things, but unless he finds the escape hatch soon, he could be sorry. I cannot remember her name, the 20-something-year-old black girl from the neighborhood with the round figure and half-combed hair. She worshiped 2 gods, equal and always separate, until tonight, with a glass cylinder in her mouth, she praised the white crystal idol of momentary bliss and eternal damnation, while T-Ray cracked open the Christian Bible to the book of Psalms, unleashing her other God. And for a split second, her opposing gods clashed in the pit of her stomach, pulling her in opposite directions, one toward the door, the other toward the fire. I cannot mix the two, she lamented. In the Guardian's tone, with palms tilted up, T-Ray announced that Wild Man was always welcome. After creaking floorboards from the other side of the shotgun double signaled his arrival, they said that Wild Man was born without the use of words, but that he had good understanding, and that he didn't like people, and that you shouldn't get too close unless you find out why they call him Wild Man. He never came to the room of fire, but I saw him through the door in a room of clutter, lying on his side with his face to the wall. All I could see is the silhouette of his black back, and it reminded me of a slave on a ship shackled to this pissy mattress by his inability to speak, unable to escape its loneliness. With T-Ray's poem on my head, he babbled biblical references, moving his hands to my chest, giving a slight push. He asked if I could feel the power. I wondered how many runaways had been conned by this. Last week, he had his hand on Wild Man's head, babbling the same babble. He said that he wanted to give him back his words, but it didn't work. A lot of people might dream about winning the lottery. I bet that wild man dreams about talking. The other kid was a North Sider from Chicago who had only been in town for 3 months. The walnut sewn beneath each eye suggested that he hadn't been to sleep yet. And when he wasn't at work cooking Creole cuisine, he was cooking his brain. He was the Santa Claus responsible for the crystal stone on the tip of everyone's pipe. A cigarette lighter was the torch. Psalms 31 was the commencement, a symphony of lungs inhaled, smoke rose, and for a moment this flock house became a palace. The silent screams of dysfunctional childhoods, broken memories, and bad decisions disappeared, but gravity was quickly restored, returning their oasis to the filthy mess of reality. The North Sider did not blow his smoke of the symphony. He opted for the solo note, and as soon as he put it to his mouth, T-Ray said, "Let me hit it first. I won't smoke it all. I hit it one time, and when it sizzle, I'll give it back." The North Sider protested in vain because after T-Ray ran with the solo note, he reminded all who could hear that this was his squat, and that if someone didn't like his rules, they could move out. I see how come the day before, T-Ray was called a squat Nazi. The North Sider was a white kid whose pipe lay limp between his lips. He pontificated the plight of black Americans, oblivious to the shipwreck he was standing in. Amy's blonde hair and blue jeans did not possess the gritty patina of a crack house elder. She must have been new to this. The last room on the left-hand side of the house used to be a kitchen, and someone from this tribe had been shitting on the floor. They say whatever you do, don't open that door. Amy was still human enough to use a bucket. She could have drowned in the embarrassment that had swollen in her eyes, aware that I was aware, afraid that I might go back and tell the world what I saw. They were primordial cave dwellers, squatting around a can of fire, trying to shield themselves from the chilly darkness that could not freeze out the stench emanating from castles of human shit that decorated the floors of what used to be somebody's biscuit-making paradise. Whatever you do, don't open that door.
I needed that today. I needed that.
That's a crazy one to need,
It's
guys.
such a crazy poem. I love it. It's just it's so elaborate. I love the characters. I just love the way that you give them dignity despite what's going on, right? And illuminate their lives in this wonderful way.
You know, I gotta tell you, that place, if y'all know where Sweet Lorraine's is, right up there. So the first street is St. Claude, and then that's 2 Rose Street. And so that house was on 2 Rose Street, and it was right in the middle of the block. And then eventually the house burned down, and then the people when they wrote about the house burning down, they did talk about some really horrific things that happened in that house. And I was aware, even when I was in there, I was never in there like I was always paying attention, and nothing happened to me. But I know that being in situations like that, it's about desperation. If them people were desperate enough, you know, I could have very easily been on the menu. You know?
Yeah.
And when I got ready to go, I also knew that I didn't feel like I could just stand up and say, "All right, y'all, I'm out of here." So I have to say this part right here. I was so captivated being there. There was something that I was so interested in. And so it's almost like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. But once the light started coming in through the cracks in the house, they put the fire out. That sterno, that can of sterno, they put it out. And man, it's crazy. Once that fire went out, whatever was compelling me to be there was gone. I was like, what the hell am I doing in this place? Right? So I said, okay, I'm about to leave. And I just didn't feel like I could just get up and say, hey, see y'all. So I just said, okay, I'm about to start doing my exit, right? I say, yeah, you know, I'm about to go. Like, I'm being real careful. I'm about to head out. And then the guy T-Ray was like, you ain't going nowhere.
Stop it.
I swear to you. And I'm like, I'm saying to myself, okay, I wonder what that means, right? And so I was saying, well, what you mean by that? You know, I'm trying to act all cool, but I'm like, what the hell you mean? And then he said, if you leave, we're going with you, like that. I said, hey T-Ray, look man, I told you I'm staying by my brother's house. And so if it was my house, everybody would be welcome. But I can't bring you to my brother's house. And then they just said, okay, well, they thought about whether or not there was a place where they can go take a shower. And I said, I could bring you there, you know? And they thought about it, they went back and forth 5 minutes. No, that's okay, we're gonna stay. Okay, see y'all. I got out.
That is so, wow. I mean, another thing that strikes me about the poem is that how everyone in that house becomes a family, in a sense.
It's a little tribe, yeah, man.
It's so interesting to me. Oh, obsessed with that poem.
What that poem made me realize is that there are all these worlds that rotate very close to the one we live in, that if you don't know about it, then you don't know about it. But it's close and it's right there.
Yes.
Because it was like, that's somebody's grandmother lived right here. There's a club right here. There's this place.
Yes.
And then there's this whole other thing inside this house that I had never seen anything.
Just beyond your line of sight,
Yeah,
right?
just beyond your line of sight.
It's so crazy. Okay, so I know we should end on a positive note. So let's talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow to me is, you know.
Okay.
I mean, unless there's another poem that you would like to.
I'm gonna do a real short poem, and then I'm gonna do tomorrow, and then
Okay.
we can.
That sounds. And then maybe if anybody has any questions, we can for Chuck, we can like open up for questions.
Yeah, I'm with that.
All right.
This is called The Second Line. This is a story of culture brought to life by sound. It is art in motion, a tutorial on purging pretensions, a blueprint for living the good life. Whiskey and weed are all we need. We want the beauty and the pleasure, the booty and the wine. Where the jambalaya at? If preposition placement is paramount, you are in need of this magic. Loosen up, baby. Geist is transmutable. Kneeling at the altar of aesthetic, the aim is Nirvana. You will come here and learn to fly. There's freedom in these streets. Surviving a crucible, we still know joy. You tap your feet when you hit a piano, but shake your ass when you hit the drums. A collective of individuals dance into oneness. The music is a spiritual blender. Peace and love to the trumpet man. Don't forget the trombone and give the tuba some too. We own these streets, a tapestry of unfettered spirits. We don't do it for the money, we do it for the moment. We money wasters. We remember and forget. This is where you learn to let the chains and strings burn. In the fire of the drum beat, you ascend with heart and feet. Every sidewalk a runway, every rooftop a stage. This is your guide to self-proclaimed boldness. This is how you dance when the whole world is watching. I think we could just leave it on that. This is how you dance.
That was a good note.
Yeah, that's a good note.
Does anybody have any questions for Chuck about the book, about the writing process? Yes, over here.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. As someone not from New Orleans, it's wonderful to get some insight into what your experience has been like here. I love how you freely transition to moments of song, and I'm curious to understand how you think of that kind of, how that comes forth in your poetry. Do you see it as song when you're writing it? And what does it mean to you to go into something more lyrical and sung?
Mm-hmm. The only thing I can say that I'm conscious of, I remember so a guy, Mark Smith in Chicago, who started the whole poetry slam thing, is a very good friend of mine. And when I had moved to Chicago in the early 90s, and so he and I became friends like maybe around like 96. And I remember back then, and I always saw him as sort of like a mentor, And I remember one of the things he told me, he said, hey, angst is an easier well to tap into the things that make us angry and mad, right? And so as a young person, I wrote a lot of that kind of stuff. And he said, you have like talent, but like like the subject matter and the way you deliver it just seemed like it's gonna. If you get to the point where you're doing like 45, 50-minute shows, it's gonna seem like it's just one long poem. Like it's all the same thing, and then you lose your audience. So you say, you gotta be able to take the audience in different directions and have stuff with different tones. So the way I see the musical stuff, like I don't ever like just plan it that way. It's almost like when somebody asks Michael Jackson when you dance and you kick your leg that way. It's like, it happens, you know what I'm saying? And so it's the same thing about when I add if I add like song to it. I am conscious about wanting to have different kind of variations in the poem just to allow me to, bring the audience in a different place. But, I can't say that I intentionally say, okay, well, right here is where I'm going to do a song. It just, while I'm creating the thing, it sort of happens.
I think the song, the lyrics bring a little bit of like catharsis, to the poem.
And I gotta say, I have to say this much as well. So I do, living in a place like New Orleans, I did a lot with musicians, right? And so because I'm always with, like I'm gonna, May 7th, I'm gonna be at the Jazz Museum of Harlem with like some incredible like jazz musicians. And I used to have before I opened this club, I used to have my own group called Voices of the Big Easy. And I guess because I'm always, and even being in this club and hearing music all the time, I'm sure that has some effect as well.
Thank you, Chuck. Did anybody else have any questions for Chuck? All right, going once, going twice. All right, awesome. Well, thank y'all so much for coming. Please, whatever you do, do not leave New Orleans Poetry Fest without this book. There's so much more we could have talked about, so much more the book is amazing. Please grab a copy. Thank you so much for coming. We're so happy to have you here.